Alrighty, welcome back, everyone. We just talked about the Michigan punishment that is going to be handed down by the NCAA. Sounds like it is going to be something around the tune of a fine and some type of postseason ban, but the postseason ban will be fought by Michigan, so plenty of updates to come on that for sure. But let's get into the ACC breakdown here, give you quick thoughts on every single team before I give you my big time predictions. And there are some really interesting teams in this conference. There's no two ways about that. We'll start with Boston College. Bill O'Brien makes his debut as the head coach of the Golden Eagles, a very, very interesting team going into this year, and one that I think there's not really an easy way to get a beat on because Bill O'Brien brings his own offense. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens there. And Thomas Castellanos is a very, very fun player at quarterback. There's no two ways about that. Definitely someone that can cause problems for really any defense out there. So this is a very interesting team. I don't necessarily think it's going to be a gangbusters year up in Boston, but overall I do think it's going to be a team that is going to build into something, and Thomas Castellanos is someone that any given Saturday could be a problem for you, that's for sure. And then you have Cal, another team that is going to be not, I don't want to say dragged, but is going to be around one player, and it's that guy right there. Jaden Ott is the dude. Cal making their debut in the ACC this year. They really are going to have likely a pretty tough year, if I'm being totally honest. I think the quarterback situation is okay between Chandler Rogers and Fernando Mendoza, but overall, I don't feel great about it. I think Tobias Merriweather is an interesting guy to watch. If they're going to do anything, Jaden Ott just has to be out of this world, honestly. So it'll be an interesting team to watch. But overall, if you're watching number one in Cal, you'll be more than fine. I can promise that. Clemson is a really interesting team, as always. This is the team that everyone is watching. They're watching Dabo very closely, and they will dunk on him pretty much immediately if they fail again this year. Go anything 9-3 or worse, 10-2 or worse in some cases, would not be enough for this Clemson team. Kay Klubnik and Garrett Riley finding the same page, getting in a groove is going to be huge for this team. The wide receivers do look much better than they have in years past, with Bryant Wesco coming in, TJ Moore, Tyler Moore, a lot of really talented guys on that team. Phil Maffa is an absolute dude at running back. The defense is going to be stifling. I'm a little bit worried about that back end, but I think it'll be mostly okay. They do have an elite defensive line and linebacker core, as they pretty much always do. So Clemson will have plenty to say in this conference, that's for sure. Duke is an interesting team, inviting a lot of new things into their locker room this year. Mike Elko and Riley Leonard leave. Manny Diaz and Malik Murphy come on in. So definitely will be a really interesting thing to watch. I think it'll be Malik Murphy. I bounce back and forth between him and Grayson Loftus for the last little bit, but I do think it's going to be Malik Murphy at the end of the day. I thought Grayson Loftus about a week ago, so maybe I'll flip my mind in the week now. But overall, I think this is a very dangerous team. I don't necessarily think they're going to do anything crazy this year, but when you have a guy like Malik Murphy who has that ability to just sling the ball all over the field, be very explosive down the field, and you can put together a solid defense, you can definitely be a spoiler in this conference. There's no two ways about that, kind of like the Duke team was last year. Florida State is the other team that everyone is watching, the on-odds favorite to win this, or maybe it's Clemson. They've bounced back and forth quite a bit, but Florida State did end last year on a very, very bad note. There's no two ways about that. They don't want to leave any doubt this time. They don't want anything creeping into anyone's head, whether it's injury or anything else related. They have a ton of transfers coming in that are going to play big-time roles. DJ Uiagalelei is the main guy. The responses, or the talk out of fall camp, has been absolutely glowing around him, saying that he is going through this offense really, really efficiently, and definitely one of those things that Florida State fans just need this season. You also have Roydell Williams, Malik Benson, and many more that are going to play big-time roles offensively. And then on the defense, it's going to be really good. Patrick Payton is leading the way there, but they got plenty of guys that are going to make plenty of plays this fall. But Georgia Tech is a really interesting team, and I think they might just be the number one dark horse in this conference, if you were to ask me. They have pretty much they can pretty much score with anyone, is what I mean. And they stole Duke's defensive coordinator, Tyler Santucci, to up their defensive play. If all of that can happen, this can be a really interesting team. Haynes King is in full control of this offense, which makes it really hard for any defense to get comfortable. Brent Key said he's the best quarterback in the conference, and while I don't necessarily agree with that, I do think he's much higher than some people give him credit for. He's a very talented player and someone that is going to be really hard to overlook this year. So So I don't necessarily know if Georgia Tech's going to find their way to Charlotte, but I know they're going to win a game that is going to make some people surprised, kind of like that Miami game a year ago. Then you have Louisville, a team coming off just a massive year last year, one of the biggest years they've had in year one of the Jeff Brom era, and I think this is a very dangerous team. You talk about someone like Colin Lacey coming in from South Alabama, that is a total game changer. The other guy they have coming in is Tyler Shuck. He will be taking over at quarterback, and I do have some questions around him. Didn't necessarily love what I saw at Texas Tech, but when you put him in that Jeff Brom offense that is so quarterback friendly, he could definitely make some noise. This is a team that has built up a lot of energy going into 2024, and although a lot of the talk has been around Miami, Florida State, Clemson, they're going to have plenty to say this year, I can promise that. Miami is the team that is the hype team. This is the team that everyone is watching, kind of like the Ole Miss of the ACC. Everyone is pointing to them as the team that can make some noise this year, and Cam Ward is the main reason for that. He is someone that totally changes the complexion of this team and what they're capable of this year. There's no two ways about that. Ruben Bain on the other side of the ball is frankly the best player in the ACC, period. I feel pretty confident in that. He is an absolute beast and is going to be an outright problem for any offensive tackle he faces, if I'm being totally honest. Definitely an absolute beast and someone that is going to have plenty to say in Miami season this year. North Carolina State is another very interesting team. They brought in a ton of transfers. Grayson McCall leading the way at quarterback. Jordan Waters, Noah Rogers, Justin Jolie, all really talented skill players from all over the place. Jordan Waters from Duke, who was just incredible last year for their run. I think this is a team that is going to surprise some people. They have ability all over the field. I think Grayson McCall, if he can fully tap into that 2021 team, they can absolutely be, or 2021 football that he's playing, excuse me. This is absolutely a team that can make an ACC title run. Now, if he misses that by a little bit, it might be a little bit tougher, but overall, this is a really, really interesting team this year. North Carolina is another one that everyone pretty much has to watch every single year because Mac Brown and that program have always made it really interesting one way or the other. It's either they're playing way better football than you expected and they beat someone they shouldn't, or they lose to someone they shouldn't and they play down to them. So it'll be an interesting team one way or the other. Max Johnson coming in as the starting quarterback is someone that I think can be steady enough. I don't think he has to be special because the guy right next to him is really special. Omarion Hampton is one of the best running backs in the entire country and definitely a guy that can just outright win a game for you. So UNC is going to ride him quite a bit and definitely someone that they very much like and pretty much everyone likes right about now. But a very talented kid that will have plenty to say in the North Carolina season. Pittsburgh is a team that is a little bit funny because they've just been kind of hanging out up there in Pittsburgh, not really saying a lot, and there's still some questions around this team, like who is going to start at quarterback. Nate Yarnell seems to be the leader right now, but Eli Holstein came in from Alabama this offseason and is a very, very talented kid. I don't know if this is one of those situations where Nate Yarnell starts the year and then doesn't necessarily end it, but it's going to be a rather tough year for the Panthers, I would say. I think they're a team that could make some noise, and if they can find a difference maker on offense, then this conversation totally changes. But I do think this is a team that is likely in for a relatively rough 2024. SMU is a really, really interesting team, and I think people just aren't really talking about them enough. The duo of Preston Stone and RJ Maryland is really, really solid in that pass game, and I think they have a slew of running backs, whether you're talking about LJ Johnson, Kamar Wheaton. They have tons of guys that are going to be able to make some noise in this offense, and I think they're going to be a real problem, and there's no two ways about that. I don't necessarily know if they're going to, make the noise that everyone or they're going to, win the ACC and go to the playoff, but I do think they're going to win one or two games that everyone just does not expect by any means. Stanford is a team that I wish I could say better things about. I think they're a really fun team and someone that can definitely build into a contender in this conference. They do have Ashton Daniels at quarterback, a really talented quarterback that can really run this offense fairly solidly. Menor, is really awesome on the outside, kind of made Travis Hunter look a little goofy last year in that game, so definitely a team that has that boost potential, has that pop potential, but overall, not necessarily super into the Cardinal this year. Syracuse is one of those teams that I'm probably the most excited about in this conference. You talk about Fran Brown going up there and in really 8 months has kind of changed the perception and the definitely the trajectory of that program. There's no two ways about that. Kyle McCord under center is absolutely huge. He didn't reach the heights that Ohio State fans had for him. I like to think he's going to reach the heights that Syracuse fans have for him. Zeke Haynes coming in at wide receiver is huge. Devin Grant is someone I've talked about a lot. I think he is a great player on the back end of that defense. So I think there's going to be a really fun team that might just cause some problems for some of the people up top. Virginia is a team that is likely going to face a tough battle in 2024. They are a very interesting team, have some players that can make some noise. Anthony Coulandria is a very, very talented, athletic quarterback, but not necessarily up to the standard of the rest of the quarterbacks in the conference. Chris Tyree is an interesting wide receiver they brought in from Notre Dame that can make plays in a number of different ways, slot, outside, returning the ball, a number of different ways that he can get his hands on the ball. But overall, I think this is a team that's likely fighting an uphill battle in 2024. Virginia Tech is the other team that is super interesting to me. Kyron Drones is an absolute beast at quarterback, someone that can absolutely be one of the very best players in this conference and lead Virginia Tech to an ACC title this year. Jalen Lane on the outside is really awesome, is going to be an absolute monster this year, and I think Anais Peebles on the inside of that defense is absolutely huge pickup from Duke. So overall, this is a team that returns a lot of talent and brought in a couple of guys to fill some of those holes. So they're going to have a ton to say about this ACC year and could be that team that kind of shocks the world this upcoming year. Wake Forest to close it out here, and they brought in Hank Bockermeyer to be their quarterback, and frankly, I'd forgotten about Hank Bockermeyer, but very, very cool to see him at the Power 4 level. A very talented quarterback that played good football at Boise State during his time. They did lose two huge players on the outside, Jamal Banks, Elijah Surratt, very, very talented guys. But overall, I think this team is likely fighting an uphill battle. Dave Clawson always makes something happen, so I think it's a team that will likely make a couple of games more interesting than you expect. But overall, I don't necessarily think they're a team that is going to be worried about too much this year in the ACC. So overall, this is a really fun conference. There's so many different teams that can make some noise. I think everyone points to Florida State and Clemson, but there's about 4 or 5 teams other than that can absolutely make it to Charlotte, and we'll break down exactly who I think is going to make it to Charlotte and who I think is the offensive player of the year, defensive transfer of the year, freshman of the year, everything that you need to know right after this. So stick with us.